are you?
Doing good.
How's the dog?
You're just gonna start going right in deep.
I mean, we all
Charles,
know that that's the most important thing right now.
yeah, we both, I mean, just to give a little backstory, we both bought doodles, golden doodles at the same time. Mine's Charles Chickens, and he's doing good. I actually had to hide from him.
You
He's
had to hide from him.
oh yeah.
He wanted to be on the podcast today.
He wanted to be in here chewing bones. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you give him bones? Does he like bones?
Yeah, he has this like, yeah, probably should keep, yeah, but we're gonna go down this route. It's gonna get super nerdy, but yeah, I give him like all kinds of like, whatever he likes to chew on, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll start the podcast in a second. We can
Okay.
do it properly. But before we get started formally, the loose theme of the conversation today is collaboration.
Yeah.
But I also just wanted to know if there's stuff that you would like me to kind of spotlight or shout out, or anything that you're working on right now that you want people to know about, or anything like that.
I mean, I think really a good one is the new Matthew Deere album is something that like, and I can talk about it more, but basically with Matthew, I'm using all his artwork. I'm not using any of my own. And so it is a collaboration from that. And I actually hired a photographer to do everything. So it's actually the first album cover that's not really quote mine, you know, it's like, not my first, but you know, it's I usually, I mean, 90 something percent is mine. So it's interesting. It's really weird. And when people see it, it makes them uncomfortable. So I think that's good.
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Let's not get too far into it yet, because I want to ask you about it on the thing. But okay, I'm just gonna get it started. And I'm gonna introduce you real quick. I was just gonna touch on I was going to say that you're the founder and owner of Michael Cina Associates, and frequent collaborator across the spectrum with different artists and brands. Does that feel like a good summation?
Yeah. And another thing that I've been doing a lot of is branding too, just so you know. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's been my main thing lately. But yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly right. You know.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, were you going to say anything?
No, I was going to, but I'm not going to.
You're not going to. Okay.
I'm just going to let it roll.
Okay. So Chris, when you are cutting this up, this is actually where we're starting. Okay. So, oh, well, let's do it at the same time if we're going to do it. Not quite. Whatever. Welcome to Plans We Make. I'm Rafiq Bhatia of Son Lux, and we're joined today by the one, the only, the inimitable Michael Cina, who is the owner and founder of Michael Cina Associates, collaborator with brands and artists across the spectrum, and in my mind, a visionary artist and thinker. And we're honored to have you here today, Michael. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Thank you. How are you doing, Rafiq?
I'm good. You're in Minneapolis right now. You're in your record room.
I am in the record room. It's obviously. Yes. My lovely record room.
And there's how many thousand records are in the room with you right now?
10 in here. I think, yeah, but I have more than that.
Where are the rest of them? Are they in storage?
In my office. Yeah, in my office. Yeah.
That's right. When did you start collecting records?
When I was 7 years old, my father and his brother were both really big into music, and he would take me record shopping on the weekends. And so I remember being like the crates and everything were like that tall, and just like remember looking up and seeing them and just going through stuff.
So you were like, you could barely reach the top of them, and you were
Oh
just
yeah,
kind
I
of
could
like,
barely see. Yeah, I had
oh my
to
God.
stand on my tippy toes to look.
What do you think it was at that point in your life that was exciting to you about records? Was it the music, or was it like just getting into the covers and like checking out the story of the visual presentation?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're totally right. It was the covers and like what they meant. Like I remember looking at probably some records I probably shouldn't have, but like some Black Sabbath records, and there's one where it's got this illustration on the front that's pretty sorted. But just looking at these, and I remember the Led Zeppelin Presence, just like that object. It's the one with has all the objects in it, and everybody's looking at it, and I was like, "What is this about?" And so I remember just going through my dad's record collection and just looking at covers and just being interested in them. And I mean, when I was a kid, I was interested in like pop music. So it drove my dad crazy. I remember him like me having like Village People and having like pop music and all these other ones. And he just is not a fan.
What was he into?
Heavy metal, psychedelic, art rock. Later, he got into like jazz, ambient, smooth jazz kind of stuff. So I got a decent amount of his collection, and sold off a decent amount as well. But yeah, his favorite band was Love and things like that. So it was,
Yeah, not too into the pop music.
no, was not into disco or anything like that. So
Yeah. And like, at what point did you kind of start to like form associations between what you were seeing on the cover of these records with like the way that they sounded? Was that something that happened right out the gate, or was it something that like took some time?
yeah, I mean, I didn't understand the language of visuals when I was younger, but I was always very attracted to that stuff. I mean, really in high school, it would have been like the Von Oliver stuff on 4AD that really like got me more interested. And then in college, I was in advertising, and I didn't even know graphic design was a profession. I mean, I didn't even know you could get paid for something like that. And I was like, when are we going to make these things? And they're like, oh, that's a different profession. That's graphic design. And like that day I walked to the administrator and it was like, I'm switching to graphic design because that's exactly what I want to do. And I think, through design, they called it visual communication, which is basically semiotics in the language of images. And to me, I read books like Berger's Ways of Seeing, and really started to understand how images can speak, and even the presentation of images can speak, context, things like that. It was just really through art. I mean, I guess really I learned a lot through art, but I also learned a lot through design. And so I think I'm just interested in learning as much as I can about whatever I'm interested in. And yeah, I've been picking up again, just rereading old stuff from the 60s and 70s, because those guys were really interested in that. Like what does an image mean? How do you communicate? What's the best way to communicate to people? I mean, they were a lot about not giving a neutral. A lot of the modernists were were interested in giving a neutral approach to communication, so it wasn't biased. And of course, everything has bias in it, and that's where some of that breaks down. But yeah, I'm just interested in everything. I really am. I'm just you name it. I'm somewhat interested in it.
Yeah. I mean, I've always sort of admired the level of incisiveness in the abstract work you do. You know, like it seems to be able to communicate something like very direct and clear, despite it being difficult to draw on exactly how you're conveying that, because of how seemingly open to interpretation an image might be, you know. And I think a lot of times, like, that's a challenge that I'm always dealing with in music, is like, how do you make this thing that doesn't on its face like telegraph its intention resonate in a way that's really direct, you know, and really kind of gripping and physical, you know. And I wonder, like, how much this period of sort of studying, you know, semiotics, but like essentially like visual perception in a way, you know, and like thinking about the way that people internalize information, like, albeit within the sort of like commodified realm of advertising at first, but like there are implications from that for just like the way that people perceive things, and the sort of like histories of meaning that are attached to different visual signifiers. And so if you have more that you feel like you can share on that, I'm super curious about that.
Well, I think I mean, just like a musician should really know about all genres, they should know about just everything that goes into that. I mean, learning graphic design, I remember my friend telling me about like working with Peter Seville and working with other people, is like, if you can't communicate something and you don't know the historical aspects of what you're trying to communicate, you're not really able to do your job. I mean, that's your job, is to be fluent in all these languages. I mean, visual communication is a language. It's not a lot of designers see it wrong, I think, today. It's a language, and anybody can use that language from anywhere. And I've been thinking a lot about design, and I was actually being asked about this book, design. There's a Helmut Schmidt book called Design is Attitude. And oh no, I'm going down a wormhole that I don't know if I would be able to pull out of. But I think, like, really, it's like you have to know what you're trying to do and how to do it. And if you can't do that, then you can't really speak in languages. And that's one of what I do, is I can speak in many languages. I'm fluent in a lot of different languages in design. And to me, that's very important. I think a lot of people and a lot of schools teach that you need to be in one, you need to pick a lane and stick in that. And to me, it's like, that's just the most boring thing you could ever want to do. It's like, I mean, to me, it's like, I want to do photography, and I've taken, 10 semesters in photography. I'm somewhat fluent in photography. I'm also good enough to know I'm not as good as some of the greats, so why would I think it's just these paths that you go down that educate you. If you don't understand motion and you don't do it, then how are you supposed to design for it? And so for me, it's just like, I want to learn everything about everything. And that's, I think, what makes me a little different than most designers, I think. And that I'm able to, I think I'm also able to, when you were talking earlier, I'm able to take that knowledge and apply it to painting and understand what the form, like, to me, like the more knowledgeable you get in a subject, the more you can speak abstractly. Because if you can't understand it on a fundamental level, how are you supposed to understand it in an advanced level? And so abstract work to me is very challenging because I know that other people don't get it for the most part. But when I see abstract work, I feel like I understand what they're doing and what they're communicating. And I feel like, I mean, we all have our personal preferences and whatnot, and we like certain things, but I like to feel like I'm open enough to maybe not like something, but still know if it's good or bad.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I go to a gallery and I see abstract work, I mean, I think it, yeah, I can tell you stories about that. Like first time seeing Cy Twombly, you know, that was challenging as anything. And I also saw him like almost 20 years ago. So we're talking about a long time ago, earlier in my career, but I struggle with Cy Twombly, you know.
Yeah, we've talked about this actually. I think when we were first working together, one of the references I sent you was a Cy Twombly image, and you were like, I don't know about that, dude.
Yeah, well, no, actually, you know, like, yeah, no, I at that time I liked Cy, you know, I believe, but I remember seeing his piece at a gallery show and just thinking like, this is shit, you know, this is, and I think what you're maybe remembering is
maybe that's what you told me about. Was
that's right.
Like,
and I had to sit with it for, the thing is I saw 100 paintings that day. And I remembered the one I hated the most, which was Cy Twombly. And that's what you're remembering is that whole thing. And I sat with that piece for 2 months. I've never sat with a piece for 2 months in my head. I mean, I wrestled with that shit for a long time. And finally I was like, just started looking into his work and who is he? What is he about? How does he paint? How does he, you know, and after you read about him and really understand and enter into that world, it just blows you away. It just like, he's one of the best, you know, he's one of my favorites easily.
Yeah, no, that's definitely what it was. I'm sorry. My memory's terrible, but
no, that was fine.
Like, I remember there being something about that. And it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that because like, I kind of feel like you and I maybe have that in common a little bit. Like a lot of my favorite music is stuff that I hated the first time I heard it.
Exactly.
And that's such a cool thing. When somebody can convince you that something you thought you didn't like is amazing, that gets extra credit. I mean, how can you not like love that even more? Because you thought before that option was not a good one. And now you've been proven wrong that there is more in the world that you can enjoy than you thought you could, you know, and that's the best.
And that's the joy of life. And that's the joy of art and music and things like that, is that, you know, that's why I love the arts, is that it does change your perception, and traveling and food and all of these things. It's like, I mean, I can just tell, we could talk about that this whole podcast, but I mean, that's exactly it. And the ability to change your mind is, for me, is such a valuable part of being human. And I'm working on a project right now for Matthew Deere, and I show it to people, and most people, I don't think, like it. I don't think a lot of people are into it. And I think there's that uneasiness when you're doing something different and you're doing something new and you're into these territories that people haven't really seen before. And my gut tells me I'm doing it's right. My gut also tells me it makes me nervous. And when I show it to other people, it makes them very nervous. Like they did, the label was not sure about it. And so we had a talk, and I said, sit with it for a couple days. And then the next day it was like, yeah, it's like one of my favorite covers. I just needed some time with it.
Yep.
So I think that the arts are about that transformation and learning and exploring and going down these routes And I'm never, that's what I'm doing for the rest of my life. There's just no doubt.
That's the whole fun of it and the privilege that we have that we get to do that, But yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that thing about that unsettling feeling, because I remember when you and I first worked together, it was for the cover for my first record, and you were constantly trying different stuff. I think you were like in a particularly prolific period. Maybe you're always prolific, but it was like there was just so much that you were kind of working on. You'd send me things. We talked about it being a sculpture at one point. We talked about different approaches in painting, and there were a lot of them that I really liked. And I remember you were just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to keep working. Like, I'm not sure that we found it yet. And then one day, like out of the blue, you sent me an email, and I think it just said like, "This is it" or something. It was like, just like, or I think we found it or something like that. And I opened the attachment or like the Dropbox link or whatever, and I was like, yes, this is it. How did you know? How did you know that was it? And I immediately resonated with it. It felt like it had so many of the qualities that we had been discussing in a conceptual way, but I still wasn't sure how you had figured out that was the one. And one of the things that you said to me was this thing about having this feeling, this uneasy feeling in your stomach. And you were like, when I was working on it, I didn't know what was going to happen. And that's when I know that I'm onto something, because it's challenging me and I'm stepping outside of where I'm comfortable. And that, you and I have talked about this, but for people listening to this, like, those words ended up really resonating with me in a very deep way. And I had a pretty significant transformation in my work between the first record and the second one, which came several years later. And I kept thinking about that, like about you having said that when I was working on that next batch of music. And I think that that's one of the things that, like, in the development of a creative practice, and also in a collaborative situation, finding ways to embrace that discomfort is, and to even celebrate when that starts to happen. Because it does mean that you're on to something that you never encountered, and that's usually where the learning happens, and that's where the development happens, and progress ultimately comes from that.
Absolutely. I think, like, for me, my process is like, I have a feeling that I know I'm trying to hit, and I never think about it as we're trying to do something in a modernist style, or we're trying to do something abstract, or we're trying to do whatever. That's why, like, when we were doing this, I'm like messing with sculpture and I'm messing with things like that, because I'm like, I know this feeling and I think I can possibly get it through sculpture. And then it's like, well, maybe it's either my talent or this isn't working. And so you just move on and you explore different routes and areas. And to me, that's what we're there to do, is like get on a path together and like diverge and kind of walk down a different different area. And I like collaboration, true collaboration, like a literally true collaboration where both people have an open mind to what they're going to see and where they're going to go. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like working with people like you and Matthew Deere and a lot of other people, is that when they are open and I'm open, it allows unexpected things to happen. And that's where the magic is.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, that's definitely, like, I think that's something that translates when people look at your work, there's a sense of that, of somebody who's like not beholden to like any conventions, including the ones that they themselves have set up, and I thought that was really cool how you were mentioning like the way that you will use different media to explore how to tease out a very specific approach. I've been thinking about when I went to Massimoco for the first time, I went to see a bunch of James Turrell's work that's on display there. And there are these two early works of his. I think one of them is called Afram. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it looks like kind of a light box that's in a corner. There's like a corner and there's what appears to be this 3-dimensional cube of light that's in the corner. And when I believe this is the one that's done with a projector. So you like walk up, and as you approach the corner, you realize that the light is actually just being cast on the corner by a very precisely placed projection. But it looks like it's like jutting out at you when you approach it from afar. And then I wandered around the gallery a little bit, saw some of the other work, and then I walked into a room, and I thought I was in the same room again because there was a work in the corner, similar size. And I was about to walk out because I was like, oh, I've already been in here. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is a different one, because it looked like an open book, like it was like kind of a slightly different shape, but it was still like 3-dimensional light kind of thing in a corner. And I was like, oh, is this just like a companion piece? Did he use two different projections? One's like, like it looked functionally the same. And so I started walking towards it, expecting it to be also a projection. But the mechanism by which he had created it was, there was like this, if I remember correctly, it's like a one of those ones where there's a space behind the wall that's actually like deeper, and then it's like a small subset of it has been carved out, so you perceive like this recessed lit space as being like dimensional in the opposite direction from where it's recessed, but it was a completely different mechanism by which he was achieving the same, like what on its face was so similar to me that I thought I'd already seen it, but the means were like as opposite as possible to like, and I think that's something that really resonates with me from like a, kind of making music, and especially this more sculptural direction that I've been going in recent years. Like, like so often you're trying to find ways to convey a specific feeling, like what you were saying, or like a specific resonance or idea in sound, and it's not immediately apparent like what the technique should be that would get you there. And when you look back at stuff, you realize that like sometimes the things that sound the most similar or feel the most similar were actually like coming from very, very different places, and I'm kind of curious, like when you're in a position where you're working with, either when you're after something yourself or when you're working with someone else and you're responding to their input or their work, do you find yourself thinking in terms of media out the gate? Like, are you kind of like, I think this is going to be photography based, or I think this is going to be all graphic and typography, or like, because you work in all of these different areas. You paint, you're a typeface designer, graphic designer, you're, also working in photography. So how do you kind of assess your, or stake out your starting position?
I think just to just to jump back, I think that's one of the reasons, what we were just talking about is one of the reasons why I like your work, is that you bend perception. For me, a lot of this stuff is about, like how can you do something in a way that I see it almost like magic, is like you're presenting one thing, but really it's another thing.
Totally. And no, I know we both identify with that in Terrell's work. And he talks about how it's not light that's his medium. It's a person's perception of light. That's the thing that you're really working with in all of these cases, is like how we filter it in through our senses. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's good. That's exactly it. It's all about perception, and everybody perceives something different. So it's hard to control that, but you can also know how other people are going to see it. And then you can play with that. And I really love that, and the mystery, and it's like, how in the hell is he doing this? How is he, where are these sounds coming from? Because I know it's probably not what I think it is. And so getting back to like, how do I know where to begin on a project? I think every project has a different brief and has a different feeling, with just something that's just right off the bat that I've just been working on is like, I thought the Matthew Deere cover was going to be like this, I had the concept again. I had the feeling. I knew what I was trying to hit. I wanted it to be a portrait of him. I wanted it to be not a literal portrait, like how do you make a portrait where you don't really, where you show a wider reach than just someone's face, because someone's face is just one aspect of somebody. It's like right now I'm seeing part of you right behind you, there's pedals and things like that. That's part of you and your art. I can go down another path with that, but all of these things are that like I'm having his children's drawings in there, like drawings from his children in there, and I'm having pictures of a stream that goes through his land, and I have paintings of his, and to me it's like pictures of his parents, things like that it's just like, how can I show a better picture of him that is not necessarily a portrait, but it shows. So I know that's what I was trying to do, and I was trying to do it through a sterile environment, because I have all these warm images, and I have, I know that the photography is going to feel warm, his art is going to feel warm, all of these things, kids' drawings, warm. And so what I like to do is, how do I flip that then? What's the opposite of that? So it's this sterile catalog. So to me, it's like I wanted to build this like cover that had 30 images on it that were just, all from, one's a kid's drawing, one's a picture of a ball that he likes, one's a instrument that he made, one's a picture of him. All these things that go into it that create this portrait, but it was really just feeling kind of sterile. It just didn't have that warmth that I wanted. So finally, I said, screw it. I stopped everything I was doing, threw all that away, and started over, and it just hit right away. It's just like right away I knew. I was like, I'm going to go the opposite of that. I'm going to try the opposite of that, which is maximal. And it's just like, but it's on a crazy background, and it's just layers of shit that just like, you have to kind of look, and it's like, what is that? And I feel like the first perception is not everybody's first perception is not going to be correct. And, but I think that's what the music is too. The music is, after he was doing like heavy dance pop music, and he takes just a right-hand turn and makes this country folk electronica record. And I don't think anybody was ready for it. And And so they shelved it. I mean, it's been, he started it, I think 2006 or 2008 or something in that. And it's coming out now. And so to me, it's just like, you just kind of go with this feeling of like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do with it. And then you figure out how to do it. And you just, I mean, to me, it's like, I feel like you have to do so many ideas, even though I've been doing this for a long time. In the last couple jobs that I've done in branding, I've pretty much hit it for the first logo I've drawn. It's like the first logo I drawn is the final logo. Did I do 200 more logos? Absolutely yes. You know, because you don't know until you hit it. But once I showed him. Well, it's funny because he mentioned an artist, and I said, "This is where I'm at," and he goes, "Exactly, this is it." He's like, within a second, he goes, "What about something like this?" And I said, "Well, this is what I'm working on right now." And he goes, "That's it, done."
Yeah,
you know, that's exactly it.
That's so great. I mean, I feel like, just as you know, I don't know Matthew, but observing his work and his evolution over time, and also the evolution of the collaboration that you guys have had over many years, that all sounds like it just seems to fit with the way that he's changing in terms of what he communicates about himself to other people. You know, like I feel like in the earlier days, like when I first became aware of him, it was partly through or mostly actually, I would say, through the collaborations that you guys have had, and it sort of established him as this like elusive figure, you know, this mysterious, you know, techno producer, like, who is this guy? And, you know, over the years, I feel like he has also like enjoyed picking that apart a little bit. Like, his social media is like one of the funniest things on the internet, I feel like, and it's just like, you know, over time, like, he's just slowly and steadily like ground away at that initial expectation that was set up for him, you know, like like he's like, no, actually I'm like hilarious, and I like play weird games with my kids, and I have these chickens and stuff, you know, like, it's just like he's an interesting guy. I mean, he's like everybody, just like you, is like, I think a lot of us have these the best artists have these other sides, and all these weird little parts to them that are just unique. And to me, it's about celebrating those things. And he's still elusive to me. I mean, in some ways, it's like, it makes it even more that way somehow. To like really know who the person is, like, just makes it feel even more like that. Yeah.
And I love that. I mean, I just celebrate that. And that's, I think, you know, the people that I surround myself, I like to surround myself with people like that. Like, Matt is an interesting collaborator too, because he'll disappear on you. Like, everybody has a different personality. Like, you're on time. Like, you're just boom, boom, boom. You're there.
I try to be. I'm consistently 5 minutes late.
You're consistently there. You consistently show up.
Yeah.
And it's part of your personality. And I think these personalities make up who you are, but they also make up your art and inform decisions. And I love to see that in people. And I think, to me, that's why I like collaborating with people over time, is I'm able to say, I think I understand you, and I understand you more as I get to know you more. And then I'm able to take this into new territories, because you have a deeper understanding of the subject. And that is the most fun to me, is being able to consistently, like when we worked on the video together. Yeah. Like, you know, I know that was like, you know, that was a roller coaster, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
That was wild. And to me, it's like, I have faith in my taste. I have faith in a lot of different things, but it scares the shit out of me every time. It's like I always see it as like you're jumping off a building and you got that free fall for a long time until you can land.
Yeah, no, I totally I feel like we've been on so many such journeys. Like, you know, I was so happy to like turn that thing that you said about like looking for the place where you finally start to really get uncomfortable and you feel like you don't know what's going on, because that's where the progress is. Like, I felt so good about finally being able to turn that back on you after I finished that record and be like, hey, so like, have you done video work? Because that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And it was definitely, I mean, in all practical purposes, picking me to do your music video was an act of faith. It was probably naive for me to, you know, I know people who do music videos and they say how horrible they are. So I knew somewhat going into it that it's like, here we go. But then when you plan it out, you're like, oh, we have everything. We're good. And then when you watch through the footage, you're like, oh no, we are not good here. We're not good. Like all those ideas got to translate. And that's, you know, and that's where you start running.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I mean, that was the video that we did for, my version of In a Sentimental Mood from Standards Volume 1. But that, you know, like, and we were building at that point off of like, you know, a whole 50 minute length live video collaboration, the like Breaking English live stuff, and some of the work that we had started in that category ended up making its way into the standards thing. But it was like, I feel like that for both of us was just this situation in which, you know, you're talking about like knowing the conventions of the form in order to be able to better sort of abstract them. And it was a real like, you know, finding our footing inside of that world and figuring out how we could create momentum and inertia inside of the abstraction was like such a, you know, learning experience and hard one. But
we also had a third party, you know, John Klukas, who's been a great collaborator with me too. And I think why I like collaborating with him is that he's also open. You know, I mean, totally. I don't like working with people who are closed books. I mean, closed books, it's like, what fun is that? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do?
The same shit you already did. That's right. Just a different version of it. But I felt, you know, like working with y'all, like there were just so many, you guys already have your own sort of collaborative history that you were building on in those situations. And yet it never felt, especially in the final analysis, like you were repeating yourselves, you know?
No.
Like it, you know, far from it. And I think that that's one of the things that I, you know, one of the most memorable, like, music lesson kind of experiences I've ever had was there's this professor, the late Wendell Logan, who started the jazz and creative music program at Oberlin. And he was, you know, hired originally because of the strength of his knowledge and skill within the like Euro-American classical tradition that Oberlin was previously just more focused on, you know? And but he could write that music with the best of anybody, you know, and but then also was, you know, so much more varied than that, and his field of understanding was really broad. And but I remember going to him for composition lessons in the last year that I was at school, and he wasn't in super great health at the time, and so, you know, they'd happen sometimes and a lot of times they wouldn't. But one of the first pieces of music I took into him, he was like, there's so much in this first 4 measures. Like, you could have spent the rest of the piece just dealing with this, and you are throwing, you're like, you know, like the gist of it was like, you're just wasting ideas. Like, there are a lot of good ideas in here, and you're just letting them go without like getting all the meat off the bones, you know, like, and it was, you know, that's such a, when you're, I think both of us like are in a quest for that, like looking for that feeling of discomfort and that like that evidence that we're pushing ourselves. But one of the things that video made me remember is like, oh, actually, like if we just stop and like look under our noses, sometimes there's a whole lot to like work with and develop out of what's already there and what's sitting like in the immediate vicinity, you know?
When you're talking about the professor, I mean, I'm just thinking about just like really what we're talking about is improvisation, really. I mean, to some degree, is that you learn everything that you need to know, and all that stuff guides your progress. And then, you know, to me, it's like when you're talking about like unpacking those simple ideas, that resonates with me just completely, is that, you know, he's right in a lot of ways. And I
feel like I'm still working on trying to follow that advice, like every time I make something.
I mean, there's complexity is there. I'm interested in complexity. I'm also interested in, you know, minimalism as well. Like, and I think a lot of minimalism is just thought and reflection and this honing down and whittling and perfecting an idea and expanding on it. And to me, that's valid, but the opposite also is valid. I mean, like, I remember when I first heard Coltrane's Africa, that was like one of the first records that I heard of his, you know, just front to back. And I just remember thinking, what the hell is going on here? And my friend said, he's a musician, of course. He's like, yeah, he hit a point where he has a lot to say. And if you just listen to the song in the moment and you're there and you listen to those 8 bars, 8 bars is a song.
Yeah.
It's a whole song. There's like, so one song is like 1,000 songs almost, you know? And to me, I mean, I think that's, to me, that really blew my mind. It's like, holy shit. And I think when you get to that stage, you can do that, and you can, but I also like a Miles Davis ballad that he's just barely playing. And you're like, fuck, he's, you know, like, how did he get all of that in this? You know?
Yeah.
Like,
no, I mean,
tiny little, it's like economy. Yeah. And that's what, you know, branding is a lot too. And that's why I like it. Is like, you know, that's why I like doing that kind of stuff too, as I love economy as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a significance that's imparted in just a little bit. You're able to call on so much, and draw out so much precedent for the way that people interpret something, you know, like, and that's definitely one of your gifts.
Thank you.
One of many, but, yeah, I mean, that thing about Coltrane, like, there's talk about somebody who could do so much with so little, like, you know, that, One Down, One Up record. It's the Live at the Half Note stuff with the quartet that came out like in the early 2000s. There's a 50 minute version of One Down, One Up where most of it is him developing a single improvisation. And if you listen to the whole thing, he's basically dealing with the same kernel of information that he starts with the entire time. And it's so focused and so you know, like I feel like it would be difficult to plan to stay on topic for that long. You know, like if you wrote everything down beforehand, you still couldn't do, you know, and that is you know, what you're talking about presence, you know, and like being able to really put yourself into a situation is one of the most important things about collaborating with somebody, because if you can't really be there, then how are you supposed to be with somebody else in a artistic space if you can't actually even just be there yourself, you know?
It is about being in the moment. Absolutely. And yeah. And paying attention without a doubt.
Yeah. I think, you know, one thing I want to ask you about that's in a slightly different direction, but also definitely the same direction is, I think we've had like a couple years now of me periodically sending you Instagram DMs of NASA posts, like just like these overview photos of the landscape of the Earth. And I guess like some of it is like maybe some moon photos, I can't remember, but it's mostly just like these satellite images of the Earth. And I send them to you every time they look like one of your paintings or like something that you could have painted. And it's very frequently the case. Like I'll just look at, you know, like I've not seen something that comes closer to looking like something you painted than just like photographs of the Earth's surface, you know?
Yeah.
And with all of that kind of knowledge of human perception and visual history in terms of like constructions that are born of human communication, it's fascinating to me that you still manage to kind of strike at something that feels much older than that, you know, and like that outlasts all of that. And so you're working with something that, you know, still communicates within the language that people have developed over many years, but it also seems so intrinsically tied to stuff that has outlasted us and will outlast us, hopefully, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm curious about how you achieve that balance, or how conscious that is in your practice between wanting to communicate on a human level that acknowledges context and also appeal to sensibilities that are more timeless and more rooted in just like the most basic aspects of the way that we encounter the world around us and that celebrate that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think something that people don't know and understand is that I do a lot of work to get to one thing. So when you see one painting, that painting may have taken me a year. It may have been done over a year's time. It may have been over 2 years' time. It could have been done over 30 minutes. But to me, it's trying to communicate something in an abstract way. You're having this feeling of what are you trying to communicate, how to communicate, and you go with a feeling. And a lot of times to get that feeling has to be authentic. You know, I have a painting in the other room that, I mean, there's a handful of paintings that just rise to the top. And, but in my practice, I guess I should finish that thought. But to me, it's like there's a quest for excellence and there's a quest for communication. I don't like putting out work because I did it. Mm-hmm. Just because I did it is not good enough. Does this communicate on a deeper level? Does this say what I'm trying to say? And I have people asking me, you know, it's like, well, how do you know? And it's just something you build up. You have an internal dialogue, and you really, to me, painting is being in the moment. If you're not in the moment, you're thinking about something else, you're not going to get good work. That's just the simple part of it. I've been distracted with work for so long. Have I been painting that much? Not as much. I have to somewhat unwind. And when I was younger, I didn't have as much work, and I was able to well, how can I jump between all of these projects? Well, it's because the stress wasn't there. I have a lot higher stakes now. And so the painting for me to unwind is to get to that point, it's more difficult. And when you were talking about my prolific period, there was a lot of strife going on, but I also had this income net that I had sold my business, and I said, screw it. I'm taking advantage of this time, and I was able to pull in on that stuff. And so that state that I was in, call it flow state, call it whatever you want, was a really special time. And I think about it, trying to capture that. But I think, as far as timelessness goes, to me, I care greatly about that. Like when I work for Ghostly or I work for you, I want that cover to be that it holds up, that somebody can look at it and say, this has value still. I just see so much work that is from now. I'm not concerned with now. I'm not concerned with what's happening now. I mean, of course I am as a person, but to me, I care about artists' longevity. I kind of don't see I try and see is in time. Like, I'm interested in Cy Twombly because of his body of work. I'm interested in Coltrane because of his body of work. I own every Coltrane record because I want to know and I want to understand and I want to see that body of work. The body of work exists over time. It takes time to develop that. And so for me, that's where the art is. That's the true art, is that collection. And so I have to follow in that ideal. Is like, for me, you will find thousands of paintings in my flat files and in boxes and things like that I will never have shown. Was I proud of some of them? Yes. Was I not proud of them? Some of them? Yes. But what I show is what I get around to, and I feel like is like, that's something magical has happened here. And but I've also learned that a lot of that is subjective. So I try and let that go. I think like when you go that first route that I'm talking about, it leads to perfectionism, and perfectionism becomes to be a jail.
Yeah.
You lock yourself in a jail, and I don't want to be there. I don't want to be in that jail. But when you're also trying to hit something, you want it to somewhat be perfect. So there's this balance that you have to try and walk that line between having high standards for your work, but also being able to be prolific and to explore. Because without the exploration, you're never going to be able to hit that gem. You're never going to be able to find that diamond.
Yeah, totally. No, and you and I have had many conversations about this. I always think about that interview that I was reading with the rapper Gold Link, where he's talking about, working with Rick Rubin, and how Rick Rubin was sort of like, if you take 8 years to make your second record, that's not your second record. That's effectively like your 8th record, and it's not like being so precious with like if you spend the time to actually complete more things and go through the cycle of, doing every aspect of the work, you'll learn more in that period of time, and where you'll be in terms of your progress as an artist can be greater if you're willing to, there's sort of like this like marginal there's this point where like you're working really, really, really hard for that last 3% that feels, that's arguably like not even making it better for anyone else, but it's just what you want for a thing. And I know you and I both struggle with that a lot, where it's like, how do we, like, is it worth it at this point even to like try to find that thing? Is this going to be something that we wake up tomorrow and like realize it wasn't even improving the thing? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I deal with that all the time. Yeah. And I think like one of my favorite quotes that is like along this level is that Picasso, that famous one where Picasso does a sketch and some lady comes and says, how much for that? And I forget, does he give her a price or something?
I don't know this one.
He gives her a price and she's like, that just took you like 30 seconds to draw. And he goes, no, it's taken me 30 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, it's funny and it has that kind of like witty, but it is true. I mean, it is
absolutely
true.
Yeah.
It's like, so, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? I mean, that's what we're here for, is we're here to, push ourselves, hopefully not to, extreme levels. I feel like you and I probably, and there's a lot of other artists that are very extreme. And I see those people and I like those people because I feel like I can relate more to them. Because I mean, I see myself like I when I see other people's work, I mean, just even like hearing your work for the first time, I was like, yeah, I mean, I can understand and see certain things. And as I worked with you, you want something to be right and you put in that work and that's where that comes from, is all that hard work. And you hopefully get into that state where you are making better decisions and it just grows until you hit that path and then you're on it.
Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, it still feels like there's so far to go.
Yeah, there is.
But man, thank you so much for taking this time to be here with us today. And what is there anything that we should touch on in conclusion? Anything you have coming up that you want people to know about, or should they just stay tuned?
I don't know how much I want to say on any of this stuff. I've been trying to I think if you want to see, I think what I've been getting off social media and trying to get away from things. And
I hope to join you shortly.
What?
I said, I hope to join you shortly.
Yeah, I have been trying to get into a better spot and a better place and live in my community and live in the real world, which I don't want it to seem like I'm going away or whatever, but I don't know. I just, with everything that's happened in the world, I care so little about online stuff. It's synthetic, it's plastic, it's just somewhat toxic to me. And so, no, I don't, I don't have anything, like I would, I mean, if anything, I need to find things more in the real world, and that's where I'm at. And so like my online presence is going away. Yeah. And I just, maybe it'll come back, maybe, and I feel like it's to some degree it's important. And others, I mean, I love connecting with people. I find that, but no, I mean, I don't care to show, I don't have that need to show my work, and I don't have the need to, I just don't care about that stuff anymore. I don't. don't care what other people think, and I don't need to be validated through anything. And so for me, I mean, I don't want to sound grumpy or sound curmudgeon-y or whatever. I mean, but I do want to have real experiences, and that's what I desire the most, are real experiences and real outcomes. And so for me, that's I don't have anything that I want to plug or anything like that. I think, you know, a lot of times just seeing what I've done in the past is enough. I mean, and
it's a whole world waiting to be discovered for a lot of people, you know, just to like, anyone who hasn't familiarized themselves with your output, like there's a lot out there to check out
and
already.
There's a lot to just explore. And so for me, it's like, start there, and then, you know, let's catch up. But I feel like, I don't like to promote my work. I just like to create and be in this world that I have. And I'm so fortunate to not have to look for work and look for different things and have like amazing things. And so for me, what I've been concentrating on is how do you share those opportunities with people?
Yeah.
And how do you give people access to what I've got? And so how do you open up those doors and let people in? And so I'm just at a different stage in my career where I feel like I am in a position not to struggle for where I am on the food chain. I'm in a position where I need to start giving to other people, and so other people can learn and grow. And that has to happen in a real environment, I feel like.
Oh man, that's really exciting to hear. And I'm sure that there are going to be things that come of that, that are gonna, you know, like it sounds like you're entering into yet another phase of uncertainty, and that's where everything good is born. So thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Rafiq.
Pleasure as always talking to you, and until next time.